We can have a bit of a philosophical discussion here. I'm using the word philosophical on purpose, Rory. The difference between humanism and person-centered therapy. Give us an intro.
Yes, thanks, Ken. It's a question that comes up in a lot of training, and it usually starts off with the tutor saying person-centered therapy is a humanistic therapy, and the students make notes and write things down. And then you go on to talk about comparative therapies such as CBT, maybe transactional analysis, and you say, of course, these come under the broad band of humanism. And they say, hang on a second, if PCT's a humanistic therapy and you're saying that other therapies are humanistic, then what's the difference? It becomes quite confusing. And I think what I'll do is I'll walk us back in time to the 1950s and a observation made by Abraham Maslow. Now, Abraham Maslow, as we know, Ken, wrote The Hierarchy of Needs. And he talks about the three forces in psychology. And what he meant by three forces were three schools of thought, three models of how we address human behavior and human suffering. And the first force in psychology was, of course, psychoanalysis. And that was the work of Sigmund Freud and Carl Gustav Jung to a great extent. They believed that our issues, our troubles in life was subconscious. So I'm giving you a simplified version of this. They were due to our subconscious processes and also our desires that have been repressed. And if you could bring those to the surface through analysis, the therapist would analyze and tell you what would happen is that we would then be able to live our lives more happily. And that went on for a time. And then we had behaviorism. And behaviorism really was Albert Ellis, who believed that we could look at things differently. Cognitive behavioral therapy looks at things slightly differently, asks us to challenge our beliefs. Are they based in reality or are they little fantasies we walk around with? And then the third force in psychology was Carl Rogers, where Carl Rogers believed that personal growth came from the inside out. It was insight therapy. That's basically what it is, where you help people gain insights about themselves and help them grow. And in the early 1950s, in terms of behaviorism and in terms of psychoanalysis, the therapeutic relationship wasn't considered very important. In fact, I was reading that in TA, it wasn't considered anything in transactional analysis. It's many years before there was a relational model. So what's happened is that most therapists now, be they psychoanalytical or Jungian or cognitive behavioral therapists, all have a humanistic kind of sensibility about their practice. They don't just practice the model without any reference to the person in front of them. They see the person as a human being first and foremost. However, person-centered therapy has that at its base. A person-centered therapy wouldn't give advice or observation or give homework to people. They would just allow that person to develop and grow. So that's really the difference. If I could sum it up in a sentence, humanism is an overarching term for people who see clients first, no matter what therapy they're practicing, and see them as human first. And person-centered therapy is built on that. It's built on humanism at its core, where other therapies may not have had that built in initially.
What a lovely intro to this topic. What I did, Rory, when I was doing this research, I went ahead and I did a compare and contrast like you would do in an assignment to look at what's the same, what's different. And I'll share some of that with you. I'm going to go through what I found. So here we go. Humanistic psychology, or humanism, is a broad philosophical and psychological movement about what people are like. Yeah, so it's basically a philosophy or a thought about what people are like. Person-centered therapy is one specific therapeutic approach that applies those humanistic ideas in a very practical and structured way. There's a really nice way of summing it up. When things are too similar, I struggle myself to pull them apart and see what the differences are. And I thought of this. I thought if humanism, the humanistic philosophy, is the rain. Yeah. So the rain is falling down, and we say, okay, that is the idea. That is the humanistic thinking, the rain falling down. And then if you look at a swimming pool, that is very different. It's got a different purpose, and you'd use it for different ways, yet it's full of the same stuff as the rain, but it's different. What do you think of that, Rory?
That's a brilliant analogy. We've got swimming pools, we've got rain. Oh, it doesn't get any better.
Oh, I tell you, this goes on and on. And let me share some more of this research with you. So Rory's already covered this. I'll give you the bullet points on it. So it emerged in the 20th century with figures like Maslow, Rogers, sometimes called the third force, as Rory has introduced, sees the human being as essentially orientated towards growth. So person-centered is a growth model. If you look at Carl Rogers' potato experiment, was in a way humanistic, because he's saying you take the potato, put it in a dark place, and you starve it of the nutrients and the things it needs, but it still grows. And the same thinking as humanistic thinking is that human beings will grow even in terrible conditions. People will grow to actualize and be the best that they can be within those settings. And then it emphasizes subjects express free will, personal responsibilities, values, and the search for meaning other than symptoms alone. So if you think about the medical model, it's diagnosis and symptoms, and we're going to treat those symptoms. That humanistic thinking is about the holistic being. And in therapy, humanistic is an umbrella. It includes person-centered therapy, gestalt, existential, transactional analysis, as Rory said, is umbrellaed over all of those. Now, if we compare that to person-centered therapy, it was developed by Carl Rogers, and it has a particular humanistic model application. And the core idea is people have an actualizing tendency. You can start seeing the connections to Maslow there, an innate drive towards growth and psychological health, which emerges in the right climate. And then the climate that the practitioner creates is that of congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathic understanding. But they do differ. So humanistic psychology, overarching worldview about humans and helping, where person-centered therapy is one model that brings that view into it. Rory.
Yeah, exactly right, Ken. And I would say that one of the things that makes person-centered therapy unique, it's not a way of doing, it's a way of being. Other therapies, certainly ones that are more directive with analysis or direction, are outside-in therapies. So CBT would be a good example of that. You go to a CBT therapist and they ask you to reframe your thinking or look at things in a different way. Not all the time, but that's the core of it. Whereas with person-centered therapy, we provide these necessary and sufficient conditions, three of which are, as you've said, congruence, empathy, and unconditional positive regard, which allows the client, like the potato can, to grow and flourish and to use their own insight to flourish and be happy in the world.
I've got some interesting thoughts about this as well. So when we think about humanistic psychology, we look at it and we go, okay, that's what it is, and now we're understanding it. But if you go back, this was really radical. The humanistic psychologists of the time were seen as
heretics.
Really, yeah, very much. They were going for civil rights, women's liberation, anti-war movements. At the time, it was not popular to speak this way. It helped to normalize things like self-esteem, personal growth, and finding yourself. And it's very interesting because at the time, the models that were accepted was the medical model or the expert in the room model, where somebody was going to tell you what you should do, why you should do it, why it was happening to you. They were the experts. So this really was incredibly radical at the time. We may look at it now as normal, but boy, there was a lot of criticism against it, Rory, in those early days. It was seen as bashing up against the idea of me being the expert and telling you what's wrong with you and how you should fix yourself, because the humanistic model believes that you can grow and develop yourself. Oh my goodness, Rory.
Oh yes, Rogers et al. Caused quite a stir in the 60s as they came up with this third force in psychology. I think what's really interesting is that their position was vindicated, Rogers' position was vindicated after his death. The American Psychological Association did a huge piece of research. And what happened was they asked the question, what makes therapy work? What's the secret sauce of therapy? And they actually came up with something called Lambert's pie. Lambert was a researcher who took this data and basically split it into a pie chart. And effectively, the relationship is one of the biggest slices of this pie. I think it's about 30%. And then 15% is the modality. So that's almost half of the secret sauce is the relationship that you have. And what happened was there was something called the relational turn, and lots of traditional psychoanalytical therapists started to embrace humanism, and TA was one of them, because transactional analysis, Eric Berne, when he invented TA, it was basically a CBT therapist, or so I'm told. I'm not a TA therapist, but from those who know, they tell me it was basically onto the board, parent, adult and child, and this is what you must do, and this is where you're at. And then they realised, as the years went on, they realised there was a human connection in therapy that has to be present for therapy really to work. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Very much so.
Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video valuable. For more free resources, have a look at our YouTube channel or visit counsellingtutor.com